I started last year. It's been a year and a half in the plant pathology position. So this was my first full season from the beginning to the end. So it's been, needless to say, quite interesting. And one of the things that I mentioned last year, but just to give you a little bit of background, fruit rot is #1 disease in cranberries, and it's a priority. And most of the management relies on fungicide applications. And last year, the EU revised or set a new threshold for the pesticide residue and decreased it from 2 parts per million to 0.01, which is pretty much the detection limit. This meant that effective this year, 2015, for export certified fruit, there was not going to be the use of this particular fungicide. And the fungicide is called Bravo. Now, Bravo has been in fruit rot management approaches since possibly like 50 years ago. It's been one of the go-tos to manage fruit rot. So one of the priorities this year in the field research was come up with fungicide alternatives for fruit rot management that decrease the risk of pesticide residues, particularly Bravo, and also come up with fungicide programs that enhanced or prevented or delayed the fungicide resistance risk. And the reason why the Bravo restriction could lead into development of fungicide resistant pathogens, it's because the remaining fungicides that we have, or in the fruit rot management toolbox, are newer, safer fungicides, but they're also single site, or they have a narrow mode of action, and those are usually at a higher risk of developing or selecting for fungicide resistant populations. And so I don't have any data to tell you how the trials did. I do know that from all the treatments that we used, the performance was really comparable, and we decreased, or there was a decrease of 20% in comparison to the untreated control. One of the things that I'm excited about this year is that a new product that new to Massachusetts at least, that is really low risk in terms of residues, does seem to have comparable control or efficacy in comparison to some of the older products or the products that we have been using so far. So one of the purposes, or why this was so important to focus on the field aspect, is because I want these recommendations to be available for the 2016 growing season. So we had to act really fast to provide some fungicide alternatives to Bravo. And continuing with the fungicide resistance talk, what I also focused in the lab was to monitor the major fruit rot pathogen populations, and I think it's really important to establish a screening or a monitoring program just to know what the population biology looks like, and if we have already a resistance problem, continue to monitor throughout the seasons to prevent complete fungicide failure. This is also, I started this because my predecessor as well had already detected reduced sensitivity to some of the fungicides across 4 different species of fruit rot. So this year, with the isolates that I collected from high-risk sites, meaning bog sites that used more frequently than others the fungicides that had a higher risk of fungicide resistance, and I found after screening, a preliminary screening, that at least 10 of those, which doesn't sound like much, but 10 of those isolates from different locations do have reduced sensitivity to one of the fungicides that we rely on. And this is important for education purposes and to emphasize on pesticide resistance management as well. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and also in response to the Bravo crisis, which I saw it as a crisis last year, but now I see it as a great opportunity, was the creation of the Cranberry Fruit Rot Working Group, which it came up as an idea from last year when we all got together, and when I say we all got together, that means that we got industry, stakeholders, fruit handlers, grower representatives, researchers, and people even calling in from different regions in the US to cope with the absence of Bravo and the restriction. And so the first steps, short term, was to come up with a plan of action. But now that Bravo is likely to come back in 2016, the purpose of the group is still to communicate and deliver a coordinated message. We have different stakeholders that are providing information to growers and recommendations, but not necessarily all of us talk and deliver the same message. So I think that's one of the really good things of having this group established. And in the NACRO meeting that we did this year, it was also an opportunity to start a draft of the research needs and priorities as a group in order to develop cranberry fruit rot management strategies. And what was pretty neat about that is not only that this is probably the first time that we're gonna revise the management section at a national level since 2000. So the current priorities are really outdated. And what was interesting about this particular meeting, and this is just a draft, is that two new priorities came up. And one of them is fruit quality. And this is partly because we had a lot of industry representatives in the group. And also the second one that caught my attention, and I think it's really important, is a need for infrastructure. So the working group provided a setting in which we all recognize the importance of communicating and having channels to work together and communicate, and it was very organic. It came up as a priority during that meeting. And so with that, now all of us in the working group will gather more input from each of the regions to make it inclusive and across the US and Canada. And for us in research, and for the station and all the other researchers in the US, it's a really good guideline to divide and conquer pretty much in the research aspect. So now we can focus on some aspects of the priorities without duplicating efforts and in fact promoting collaboration. So that's pretty much my year.